tough. There's actually a story about this thing called TiVo. Anybody hear of TiVo? TiVo is the only Fortune 500 company to actually make their money through lawsuits and not selling their product. Because what happened was they spent $500 million educating, $500 million educating people as to what a DVR does. You know, how you can pause and record live. It took forever. And once somebody got it, they're like, this is awesome. But it took so long for people to figure out what it was that gave time for the cable companies to develop their own DVRs and offer them to their clients who they already had the connection to and could just send a mailer to their existing customers and then sell DVR. So then the only option that TiVo had left was to sue all the cable companies for copying their idea. And I think they made like $250 million off of lawsuits, but they didn't make any money selling their product because they took all their money that they made selling the product and tried to educate people. So that's a dangerous part. But when you're doing something totally new, you have an education gap, not just an awareness gap. And so we went out and said, hey, we have this awesome thing called the volunteer group. Like, what is it? Well, let me tell you about it. Oh, I don't have the attention span. And so then you run into that over and over. And then what happens is that's why that exponential curve in a good product happens sometimes. It's new. Is that educating, 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 and then when people get it, they go, oh, this is great, and then they tell other people, and then you move on from there, and then you get interns to do social media and other people like that to kind of, again, social media is one of those things that why do you spend a lot of money at social media right away? Fire bullets first. Get somebody who you don't have to pay very much, and then get them rolling with it, and then if they do well and you start getting sales, hire them. If they don't, sorry, good internship. So that's kind of the, anyways, that's just a little bit of how it's worked. Then we start out, then we found a new niche for that whole thing called the Stu card, and we're trying that one out and doing the same thing, discounts and travel insurance for study abroad and all those types of things, and that's been a lot of fun. And then there's another thing I kind of grayed out, but this is really new. It hasn't fully developed, but this is an inbound insurance product for people who are like living in Latvia and they want to go work at Valley Fair or Six Flags for 3 months. They need travel insurance, so we'll figure out a way to get them discounts in a card and put it all together, and that's a lot of fun. So here's what I wanted to talk about when it comes to ideas, is that most of us, if you were to like map out the ideas in our head, it would look like this. I've got this one idea, and then maybe it could connect to this other one over here, and oh, if we could get this over here, and then it all just is this. I mean, that corn might be tasty, but I have no idea. You know, the peas, or whatever, the cilantro, it might be really good cilantro, but I'll never know, because it's all just in this mess of excited energy of something, but I'm not sure what it is, and it's not labeled out. And so what we like as humans is to see that, where it's beautifully laid out and presented and kind of arranged into different things. And so one thing is how do you get from this, how do you find something like this to get to this? And that's something that we've had a struggle with and a problem with in our different enterprises that we're trying and different things that we're trying to do. And so what we came up with was a thing called the idea buckets. And this is like a little way to organize to get from the messy food to the beautiful Ruth Chris steak and asparagus. So hopefully this will make some sense, but what we do is we kind of split things out, and all the ideas that we ever have, we throw them into different buckets. And right away everything starts off into a worth noting bucket. And so this is something, there's something here, it's interesting. So let's keep that. And then it goes into a worth researching bucket, and you spend a little bit more time and energy on the research. And if it makes it past that, you're like, wow, hey, we did some research and we found that we actually might be able to do this. It turns out that there's some people that like it, the customers, and this would be a good time to do, if you haven't heard of Bill Svoboda's Crush Club, this would be the stage to do a Crush Club. That is an awesome idea, and I just want to promote that as best I can to as many people as possible. So definitely look that up, because that's a phenomenal idea. But the idea is actually letting people tell you what they want before you make it, which the Edsel was the opposite. If they had done a Crush Club, they wouldn't have lost $2 billion. So, and you could have charged them way less for consulting. You know. $200. Oh yeah, easy. So, anyways, then after the worth researching, there's a whole new stage of worth planning, where you're actually getting real data, not just kind of, oh, I think it's going to cost this much. Because my rule of thumb in starting companies is they always take twice as much money as you think, and they take twice as long to take off as you think. And that's after you've done your generous estimates. So you do all your generous estimates, and oh, I think this could be really expensive. And then you do all this, and you give the estimate. And then once you write it all on paper, just double both. And, and that's usually more accurate to what actually happens. So, but anyways, that's the planning part where you're actually finding out if it actually costs this much to, I don't know, get moringa in China or something like that to be able to build a supplement company or whatever you want to do. Not that I've thought of that, but I want to help. But that's it just came to my head. And then finally, there's worth investing, and that's like, in light of all the other ideas that are going on, what timing-wise and what opportunity-wise. So I want to walk through these a little bit more, and I'm going to kind of unpack a lot of it in the breakout session. But the final bucket is the worth less, and I put it as a recycling bin because sometimes a great idea is a combination of 3 different ideas that wouldn't work on their own, if that makes sense. So you have this over here and this over here, and that wouldn't work. Like if you wanted to start, somebody wants to connect businessmen, oh, that's not going to work. But maybe we should start a social network. Oh, dang, there's Facebook. Well, let's put them together, LinkedIn. And then all of a sudden there's a whole new thing that's a combination of connecting businessmen and a social network, and then boom, he's a billionaire. So it's that easy, trust me. So anyways, I have a few things for the worth noting. And that's to make it into a worth noting bucket, it has to be tangible. A lot of times when you talk to people who have ideas, their ideas are not fully formed yet. You want to say, you got some kind of flash of brilliance, but I think it's one of those things that you can see and no one else can see. And so at the point that you can actually explain it to somebody and they can get it, that tangibility is really important. Reasonable capacity or experience, again, that's stay within something that you have some type of realm of influence over or background knowledge of. I had a friend who's a photographer who started his own photography business of wedding photography. And he says, you know what, I think I want to start a business. And I was like, well, you already have a business. He said, well, yeah, I have a new idea. And I always get nervous when people have new ideas sometimes because I'm like, okay, what's this going to be? But he started out with an idea of doing a on-location outdoor wedding facility. And I said, that's something I think you would have a chance of doing because you do 30 weddings a year. You know what's going on in the wedding world. You know what people pay for it. You know all. So again, finding that adjacent. What's something that you're already into, and something right next to it, and there might be huge opportunities there. So, anyways, unique value proposition. That's the side of there actually is. You do your strategy map, and you find something unique that you can bring to the table. That's not just. I mean, no one wants to buy something just because it's you. You know. I know we'd love to, but that's not. They buy because it's actually better for them. So, and then finally, energy creating amongst the team. If other people get excited about it, then you might have something to work with, you know. And so that's a little bit of the worth noting. I'm going to talk more about the strategy map stuff in the breakout session, and then the worth researching. And I'll try and finish up real quick here so we can do some questions. But worth researching. This is one thing I want to talk about. Again, there has to be a market for it. That's a crush club where you sit down and talk to people. Because the biggest mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, they go to people and say, hey, do you think this is a good idea? And people go, oh, that's a great idea. And then you say, then you go, wow, all these people think it's a great idea. No, they just told you that because they like you. But if you said, hey, would you pay me money for this? Much better question. Talking to somebody in the industry who makes decisions on buying something, would you pay me money for this? Much better question. And that's, again, that's part of that Crush Club is really sitting down and having qualitative interviews. You don't have enough money to do a market study, as an entrepreneur, usually. We don't have money to pay, like Target and have analysts that figure out all these different things and find out that, the kid's going to want a shiny metal sparkly toy for Christmas versus the cutesy toys. I mean, they spend all kinds of, you'd be amazed at what Target spends money to find out, right? So, anyway, but you don't have that money, but we do have this great thing called interpersonal relationships with people, and we can sit down for a long time and get qualitative research information from people. It's great. Economic potential, you got to work on that on the research side, and then market is favorable. This is something that a lot of entrepreneurs really don't think about, is how easy is it for somebody else, if your idea is good, to kill you? And this has happened. My brother had a fantastic idea about adoption and travel and getting this program in this niche, and he got really excited because he got to pitch it to Northwest. And we sat and we pitched the whole thing, and Northwest said, oh, that's interesting, but we don't think we're ready for it at this time. And then 2 months later rolled out the program. So and they just totally hammered. And we lost millions of dollars, basically, on that being able just to, hey, I think we can get these people involved. And how easy is it for somebody who's bigger, if your idea is good, to kill you? And that's one thing you got to watch when you're looking into a market. Even if people say, I'll buy it, you got to go, okay, who can copy me and who can kill me? I sat next to, this is an odd one for you, sat on the plane next to the Vice President of Business Development for Microsoft. He's the one that buys, he said, I'm the one that buys companies that are evaluated between $50 and $350 million. And then my boss buys the companies that are $350 million to $1 billion. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Cool. I mean, it's just weird that someone's job is to do that, right? So I said, well, what about, do you have like someone who works for you then who buys the companies that are 1 to 50 million? He goes, no, we just pillowcase them. I said, what? He says, yeah, we just pillowcase them. We surround them in the industry with similar technology, and we make sure that that we can beat them and that they'll fold. And I said, holy cow. And then he went to watch The Sopranos on the plane, so I thought that was fitting, so. But he just said, he says, yeah, I mean, technology is, for us, we can build anything we see. The only thing we're buying is their customer list. And if it's $50 million, that's worth buying that customer list, And so it's just interesting knowing that in certain areas, you better watch your backside based on where you get into. So it's not just a good idea, but it's a favorable market. Again, I have a best idea for a special case for your CDs. Well, not the good timing, so it's all of that kind of stuff. So it might be an awesome idea, and people love it, but watch the timing part. And then that's where the experienced opinions from people can really help. This is Porter's 5 forces that'll help you determine that in a market. I'll do that in a breakout. And then worth planning. This is the part where you actually throw in timelines, projects, people's options for funding, pro forma, all of that stuff, where you're really finding out exactly how much this is going to cost and how much you can charge, and does that work, and so can you actually make money from that? And then the pro forma and then options for funding. There's all kinds of different ways to get funding, obviously, but the more you have the plan, the better the plan you have, the more people are actually going to want to fund what you have. It's been and then you also eventually get this down. Most of you know about the idea of a slide deck, right? Being able to get your entire concept, that goes with the tangible point, down to 6 slides. And if you can't share the entire thing in 6 PowerPoint slides, then you've got to rework it and make it more tangible, more simple, more fundable that way. And then, the worth investing. That has timing, investment, and priorities. How big is the investment? What's the time to get in? And then what other things are on the plate? That's kind of on your worth investing side. And then one last thing I wanted to just talk about is the combination of one idea with another idea, the idea of the worthless bucket. This actually wasn't the equation that made Google $32 billion in revenue this past year. This plus this other equation. And this is for those of you who are math heads, this is the equation for a blind generalized second priced auction. And that is what's called search advertising. And so the idea of being really good at search was one thing. And then they had the Google boys, they had a professor of economics at Stanford that they asked, do you know how we can monetize this? And he went into his little room, egghead room where economists go, right? And comes out with this. And he says, this is the optimal equation for how to get people to, it's the second place blind auction. You can look that up on Wikipedia. It's kind of fun. But this will get the most people to be able to want to buy advertising on your site. So it was the combination of the egghead economist and the crazy physicist put it together, and that's what be able to, and that's the idea, is that sometimes the worth less bucket is awesome because you can pull things out of that and go, oh, hey, and The Economist probably played with this because it's game theory. He probably played with this and taught it in class, and then somebody says, can you apply this to business? And like most economists, oh, this would be interesting and fun. And economists are weird people. I don't know if you really know too many of them, but they get excited about math and things like that, and yeah, they all wear old suits. So. Except for the guy that was at Google, yeah. So here's my last thought for you, is that ideas I always think are like cream, and there's something there, but they need to be beaten, and if you beat them, then you get whipped cream, and so you beat them through the different types of filters that I was talking about. You beat them up with different people adding input. You beat them up with having qualitative interviews, and take your ideas that you think are good and beat the heck out of them. And then add stuff to them, like, oh, maybe a can and some gas, and then you get some really good ideas. So start playing with beating your ideas, and then you won't end up with the bad idea.